Welcome back to the Boundary Corner podcast. I'm Curtis Wilson.
I'm Brian Siegler, buddy. What's up? We're on a Thursday night again. Thursday night.
Thursday night, back to the old time slot, not the new time slot. It's been a week for us here in Richmond, man. Snow all over the place, kids not in school, us trying to work from home
Yep.
with kids not in school.
They pushed us back until at least the 17th before we can go back in the office. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, I'm going
So,
to be here for a while. We have not been given the official date yet, but needless to say, the week after the holidays, which was a lot of fun, a lot of fun. Um, I know me and you talked numerous times, texted back and forth.
yep.
Got to say, your son's Rainbow Road, sweet.
Yeah, I've been having just as much fun as he has with that. Anybody that's got kids of a certain age, get that Hot Wheels Rainbow Road. It is the shit.
All right, I'm gonna give y'all another suggestion. Kids of a certain age. When we say a certain age, I'm gonna say 5 to 10, 11, maybe even 12. Nintendo Switch, Hot Wheels Unleashed. Dude, that game is sweet. I
Nice.
mean, sweet. Like, A, if you're like us, we have probably 300 or 400 Hot Wheels cars in this house. You've seen. It feels like you go into this race and you notice and can identify every single car that's on there. And you can customize the cars.
There you
And
go.
you can build tracks. And you can customize it's like so sweet. Like I sat here one day and we were playing like 4.5 hours went by. Like, oops.
There you
But
go.
but the holidays were a lot of fun. This week's been kind of crazy with all the snow. What 6.5 inches here in Richmond?
Yeah, we had
Um,
about 5 on this side. I know y'all had about another inch or two more than we
yeah.
did.
So just lots of crazy stuff, man. And I tell you, it's been a little over 2 weeks since we were last recorded, and we have a ton to unload tonight in all aspects of Hokie football. But we're going to start with a couple Hokie headlines not related to football. And Brian, I didn't get to watch this last night. Tried to follow it, but an ugly loss to a winless conference, 8-7 NC State Wolfpack Hokies fall 68-63. I know you got to watch pieces of it. What seems to be the issue? I mean, after that great St. Bonaventure win and battling Duke, it seems like all the old stuff is back up.
Yeah, I mean, I blame a little bit of it on the layoff, but I mean, some of this isn't layoff related. You can't miss point blank layups. You can't miss the easy ones. You can't miss that many free throws. Um, Naheem just has not been himself the last probably 7 or 8 games. You can't hang with him that long. If he's struggling, you got to get somebody else out there. You can't let someone that's struggling that badly with their shot get that many minutes.
Yeah, I mean,
When you when
he
you
was 11.
need when you need points generated, because other guys were also not having their best night, and then you got a guy that's struggling like that. You gotta do something different and mix it up. I think Mike Young's problem right now is that he's being a little too um, he's giving them a little too much leash to try to get their shot back. He was doing it a little bit with Storm when he was struggling. He's doing it now with Naheem. Um, I think just a quicker hook and mixing things up a little bit more with the lineups could maybe generate some more offense. But it was also a game where NC State, for about two stretches, looked like they couldn't miss.
No,
So
I
so
saw
that didn't
people
help. That didn't
saying
help at
that.
all.
Yeah, I saw people saying that there were a couple stretches, one in the first half and one in the second, essentially when they took the lead and kept it like 5, 6 minutes, where it's like every shot they take or they can't miss. And I
Yeah.
know me and you talked about Naheem yesterday. He shot 18% from the field. I mean, it's okay to let guys try to shoot their way out of the funk, but it comes to a point where it's detrimental to the team. And when you still shoot 40% or 43% from the field, and one guy shoots 18%, and it's a 5-point game, like you said, maybe putting somebody else in. The other piece, and I don't think there's any way to fix this just based on how the team's constructed. They got murdered on the boards.
Yeah.
Murdered. Out rebounded by
The offensive rebounds were ridiculous.
14.
Yeah,
14
there was
offensive
a
rebounds.
period where there was one offensive board on like 5 or 6 straight possessions for NC State. So it was pretty awful. That stretch was pretty awful to watch. But I still think this team has talent, but they've dropped so many games at this point where seeing a path to the NCAA tournament it's narrow at best.
Very narrow. It's going to have to be something like out of the next 12 games. And I'm trying to look here at the thing. Yeah, the next 12 games, which is basically almost the rest of the regular season. I mean, it's going to have to be 10.
Yeah.
9 or 10 wins.
I think what we're looking at is like I think there's 16 left. I think they need to go 12-4.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I'd go there. Yeah,
that's pretty much what they'd have to do.
Yeah, so we'll see. We'll continue following it, and we have our
and some of those wins need to be quad 1 wins. So
got to beat the upper echelons. All right. Other news this week, not related related to football, but not related to football, was John Laser stepping away. He tweeted this out on the 3rd. Hokies, this will come as a shock, and I hate that. As effective today, I'm stepping aside as voice of the Hokies. My lifelong passion has been sportscasting, and representing you has been my joy and privilege of a lifetime. However, when my dad passed, I started thinking about wanting to do more to help people, primarily through mental health advocacy. His dream over the last few months, that urge has grown. This is the hardest thing I've ever done, but I feel at peace knowing all that we can do. I'll be focusing on mental health initiatives in the short term, but I will be back in the booth at some point soon. Know that I love you all and will always appreciate the faith you put in me, and I respect you always treated me with. I will always be a Hokie. Thanks for being there, and thanks always for being Hokies, ladies. Kind of a shocker because he was in New York just a few days ago calling the game.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny because some people Laser has grown on him, right? We heard that from people. Laser's grown on me. I think for me and you, it was okay it was great from day one. We were so used to him here in Richmond.
Yeah.
That voice was already, we associated with it.
Yeah, I think that's the difference for Richmond folks is that you were already hearing that voice from time to time in your sphere, so there wasn't that much jarring. I mean, you heard something. It wasn't touchdown tech, but it was different. But we were familiar enough where it wasn't as jarring as it was for probably some of the Roanoke folks, the Blacksburg folks, the other folks in the NRV that were full on Roth disciples.
And don't get us wrong, Roth is a disciple. If you are a Tech fan of our age, so many calls, whether you heard them on the radio or later, like watching the highlights and they play it, it's always Mike Vick's one, always a miracle in Morgantown. But for John, the Clear Mountain there, it started coming, and whatever's going on, Laser is, from every account anyone's ever had, Laser's a great human being.
Yep.
Great human being. And so hopefully, I mean, I don't know if this means he's going to come back to Tech or if he's going to do other things, but for him, God bless him. Whatever he and his wife decide to do, I know it looks like they're going to be going on a around the country road trip.
Yeah, it sounds like they're going to be hitting all the points of interest throughout the country and
probably
doing some good shit along the way. So,
good stuff.
Best of luck to him and on this next step, and hopefully we'll get to see him at least in Virginia when everything settles down. If not, back in Blacksburg. So, Best of luck to you, Lace.
Absolutely. All right, Brian. Well, let's cut it off and let's jump straight into the football and let's talk about some of the new hires. And before we get into the big new hire, Brian, it's kind of been breaking the last couple days. 2 names have emerged as frontrunners for the wide receiver job. Mike Brown down at Cincinnati, played at Liberty, from Charlottesville, so a Virginia native. and Tony Washington down at Coastal, from High Point, North Carolina, played down at App State.
Yep.
These guys are like in their 30s. Both have NFL experience. They both were in the league about 3 years. Brown had some significant playing time. Washington hung around a few good practice squad rosters. And we're only mentioning these guys' names because this is stuff that came out in the public. Jason Stamm, who used to write for Rivals, writes for several other sources now. He has said it, and I can't remember who mentioned Tony Washington out.
There was a couple guys that mentioned Tony Washington.
Okay.
I can't remember right off the top though.
I'm good for either one of these guys.
I'm good for either. I'd probably prefer Mike Brown. It's probably like a 60-40 for me, Mike Brown, but
yeah.
I'd be happy either way here. I think Mike's seen it done at a little bit higher level in his current role. Yep. I think that probably is a little bit more of the reason that I'm kind of leaning that way. The mentorship he's had is a little bit more official in my mind.
Well, it's true. I mean, back to back New Year's Six bowls.
Yeah.
Back to back AAC titles. I mean, we're going to discuss it a little later. He's got a guy who's a junior that is, Sauce is getting heavy praise. And he's probably going to be drafted in the first 2 days.
Yeah.
And here's the one thing I want to joke about, Brian. Watching some Coastal games, definitely watching more Cincy. Our wide receivers are still going to run block good. Did you watch them? It's all the other stuff that they do a lot better.
It's the stuff you expect wide receivers to do, not the stuff that is the nice icing on the cake that we've been getting.
So whenever this breaks, which I think this is probably going to come to fruition, probably before the next time we jump on.
Yeah, before you hear from us again, I'm more than likely we'll have a wide receiver coach that we can talk about a little bit more in depth.
All right, Brian. When it came out was about 2 weeks ago about our potential offensive line coach.
Yeah, we were on watch like just before
Christmas.
The holidays. Yeah,
but it was about a week before that is when the smoke started.
Yep.
Give me the first thought. Did you think this is bullshit? I'm not getting my hopes up.
When I first heard Joe Rudolph's name floated out there, I was like, well, that certainly would be nice, but that was kind of like, when we were first talking about who a good OC was, and we'd be like, well, if we get Joe Brady, that'd be great, right? Joe Rudolph was my Joe Brady of offensive line. So that tells you where I landed on this, is that I'm ecstatic.
Oh, my God. So Joe Rudolph announced associate head coach, run game coordinator, offensive line. His track record in every sense speaks for itself. He played offensive line at Wisconsin while Barry Alvarez was beaten up. He was part of that early 1990s Rose Bowl team. He then played in the NFL for 5 years, including with my 49ers back in 1997. After that, took some time off and then got back into the coaching ranks in 2004, where he was with Ohio State as a GA, then doing some strength coaching. Moves over to Nebraska, goes back home to Wisconsin, coached tight ends then. Then we got to know him 2012 to 2014 with Pitt, OC there with Paul Chris, tight ends coach. Then he goes back to Wisconsin, where he was basically the, secondary offensive coordinator and the O-line coach.
Yep.
And, man, over that time, his lines had blocked for Monte Ball, Jonathan Taylor. I mean, so many good running backs. He had a guy won the Remington just a couple years ago. I mean, I don't know what to say, because this is one of those hires where, as fans, you sit here and it's just kind of like, we're going to go get the Wisconsin offensive line coach, or you're full of shit. You're full of shit.
I mean, the only probably other I mean, the only thing that would be higher than that would probably be okay. Well, you went and got Notre Dame's offensive line coach. I mean,
I mean,
is that
it's
is that really the only other coach that's probably in the same
maybe,
realm in terms of prestige?
maybe.
In terms of what they've done as a program, the guys they put in the NFL, the the numbers that their running backs put up, things like that. I mean, it's production central for running backs, and you don't get running back production without good offensive line play.
No.
So you get Joe
Well, look at
Rudolph.
offensive
He's
production.
getting the associate head coach tag. He's getting the running game coordinator tag, and he's coaching OL. And I mean, to me, this is as good as it gets in terms of establishing what we want to do and getting our identity back. I don't think it's going to be the full on ground and pound that you see at Wisconsin.
No.
I definitely think it's going to be more of that kind of a power RPO, smash mouth spread type philosophies. But having a guy that can coach that zone, but also coach those gap techniques, so you get the
Recruit.
gap. Yeah, and he can
And
recruit,
recruit.
and just kind of already having a good understanding of what it means to, strategically set up an offense each week and things like that. He's not just been a position coach. So he's already got that coordinator experience where he's coming in, partnering with what we believe is going to be Tyler Bowen. We haven't still got the official announcement, but I mean, everything's out there that's the move. We just got to get this Jacksonville season over with.
We just got to get
I,
110 done. Y'all got to smash them Sunday and get to the playoffs.
yeah,
And then,
we're going to end Tyler Bowen's NFL year, and then he's going to
yeah,
come to Blacksburg.
exactly. But just still, I think now, and Brian's you kind of already talked about the zone and the power schemes that Rudolph, they run both. I think what you get to do for the next, about 6 weeks, because we're aiming about 6 weeks from now, we're going to do a breakdown episode.
Yeah,
Brian's like said,
whether it's going to be either you're either going to see me doing that episode here with pretty much nothing on the walls behind me, or at the new house with pretty much nothing on the walls behind me. So
be prepped. But either way, Brian gets to start looking at, we already talked about Brad Glenn's stuff, Tyler Bowen stuff, Rudolph stuff. Probably looking at some Joe Moorhead tape where Bowen's kind of cut his teeth. I mean, right now, and we don't have the wide receiver coach, we don't have the offensive coordinator in name yet. But let's just talk just a second about the staff in general.
let's go.
I mean, so much experience. David Cunningham, shout out him. He continues to put the spreadsheet together. I think we've got like 200 years of experience. I'm joking, but we have a ton of experience at the Division I level. We have guys who are really good at what they've done. And I was telling Brian right before we got on, this isn't a buddy thing.
Yeah.
Joe Rudolph and Brent Pry have no prior connection. They don't. You start looking like Brad Glenn. Yeah, he coached with Brent when they were super young, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Same with Stu Holt. Chris Mark.
These aren't protege situations. This isn't a protege situation like it was in Cornelson
and Fuente.
Yeah.
The closest thing you can say as a protege would be Chris Mark.
Yeah.
That's a kid he coached 10 plus years ago at Vanderbilt. But since in the coaching ranks, they've had no connection to each other.
Yeah.
So it's a staff of guys that he knows, but the only one he's coached with significantly is Bowen in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
So you kind of sit here and it's one of those. I think Brent Pry has put together a very good staff, but I think if anyone starts slipping, I don't think Brent Pry has that connection where he won't shape up or ship out.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing is that, he has everybody's going to foster from relationships, especially as as a first-time head coach.
Yep.
You're not going to start making calls to just random big names and be like, "Hey, you want to come here?" That's a good way to miss on the guys you're aiming for, and then other guys that you wanted are now getting jobs elsewhere. You target the guys that you've got relationships with that you feel like would work at the university that you're at, want to come there, and then you go seek them out. And I think Coach Pry has done a good job doing that.
And
Brad Glenn is a great example. I mean, I think from a quarterback and passing game coordinator standpoint, it's a good complement with what we have at OC and what we now have at offensive line. I think that those are going to be good complements to one another. We're still waiting to hear on wide receiver, but I feel like both of those guys kind of fit that same mold of, and I think again the focus on recruiting. So the mold we're looking at, solid reputation as a on field coach. Most of these guys are above average or better recruiters.
yep, absolutely. And I'll tell you what else, Brian. Let's go to support staff because he's knocking it out of the ballpark there. Obviously got Dwight Galt on staff. There's a rumor Jarrett Ferguson was in Blacksburg today.
Started following Galt. Started following a couple other Hokies that he didn't have on.
Yeah,
Hokie staffers that he didn't have followed before. Yeah,
tea leaves. But over the time that we were gone, and if I can't pronounce the name right, Mike Villagrana is going to be the senior director of player personnel. He comes over from Marshall, where he was essentially a GM, and basically assembled their recruiting staff, the highest rated recruiting staff or recruiting in Marshall's history. He had also been director of recruiting at Mississippi State with Leach and Moorhead. He was with Pry up at Penn State from 15 to 17, basically in the recruiting department up there. So the way it seems to me is Mike's role is Mike's probably going to be heading recruiting in some way under a player personnel. Is that what you're getting from it?
yeah. And what I liked about him right off the bat is that he brings the bona fides, but I mean I've also seen him. He's pretty active on Twitter, so he's using social media as a leveraging tool, pretty off the bat. And he's interacting with fans. He's liked some posts from fans, retweeted some stuff. So you like to see that from a recruiting side off the field staff perspective. So that's a good start, and I thought that was going to be it in terms of kind of big moves on the off the field stuff, and then we got the news a few days ago.
Just
Michael Hazel,
chief of staff, and this was a coup because essentially this guy had been doing the same thing for James Franklin for quite a few years. Obviously, with Pry fostering the relationship up there, he comes down here. He was the senior director of football operations up there, and down here, he gets chief of staff. Like up there, he was looking at external operations, analytic, facility projects. He was the liaison between football and the athletic department, marketing. So it sounds like he is going to be the guy that is going to essentially be John Beilein.
Yeah.
All the tech heads, he's going to be Brent Pry's John Beilein. And, got his – I'll tell you this right here. This is the one that he went to Elon. He got his MBA from Elon. He got a master's from Vandy. You don't just get to go get your master's from Vandy. This guy seems smart, and it seems like he knows what he's doing. And for a guy who's going to be the right hand of the coach and needs to know everything, I mean, I'm still a little bit shocked that he left Penn State.
Yeah, this is a big move. This is a big time move to get a guy from the program that you're leaving to kind of follow you. And in terms of off the field, I can't really think of a better fit. Because this is a guy that knows what it takes to recruit big time players to a similarly positioned university.
Yep.
And I think that that's something that we need. Understanding our landscape, understanding the benefits and limitations that Virginia Tech has to offer, and being able to sell that properly. I think that's huge. And I really don't know of a better off the field move I should say I couldn't picture a better off the field move situation than we've had recently, because it tells me that we're not that mom and pop
No,
recruiting and support staff operation anymore. These
no,
are big time moves that we haven't seen ever.
no, ever. And Witt said it back in with the spring about the stuff that was going to be happening, right?
Yep.
And it's happening. Like you said, we're no longer mom and pop. It's starting to look like a modern day collegiate football program in putting
Yep.
all these guys in roles. And I don't. I think me and you probably can't wait. Probably most of us out there, you probably can't wait. What's going to probably happen really in the next month, as you start seeing the analysts, as you start seeing the recruiting and how it's shaped out. Obviously, me and Brian have thoughts of the way we like to see it. I'm just interested in how it develops, how Brent Pry puts it together, and how he creates his model. All right, Brian, let's skip over this. We did have one more Hokie essentially declare for the draft. Tay Daly transferred, although he did have a year of eligibility left. He's 23 years old.
Yep.
He had a pretty solid season, you know, good tape to put out there. He's got a Vanderbilt degree. He's probably got his master's from Tech in the next few weeks here. I mean, it stinks because you know now it's some very we're very young back in the safety. We had some guys play
Yeah.
luckily though, but we're young.
Yeah, I think that's something that we need to look into. Tay had a good season. I wouldn't call it a great year, but I mean, he played well in spots, and there were certainly times where he was playing as good or better um, than everybody else on the field there. So it's a loss certainly, but we do have some young guys in that position that are coming in and coming of age. So look for them to make some noise this year. But congrats to Tay. Once a Hokie, always a Hokie, and go do your thing.
Yes, sir. Best of luck to him. And all everything came in, played great, great teammate, and everything that we can see. Brian, you back with me there? Like we lost my buddy here. Um, but so that probably is capping it. Tanuda gone, probably the one guy we think probably should come back. But the rest of them, sometimes it's just time. Sometimes it's just time to go. A lot of these guys have their degrees. It's either now or never. You keep playing college, eventually, you're Terrell Smith. Love Terrell Smith, but not too many guys can go, 7 or 8 years in college. And what we're going to jump into next here, Brian should be back with me in just a moment. Um, we're going to look at the portal. And, our buddy Brett over from Pick Six Previews, we've already talked about it. Hey, he showed back up. Brett from Pick Six Previews had been keeping real track with it. And Brian, there have been 1,000 entries into the portal since August.
Yeah, it's a lot of people. A lot of people in the portal.
That's a ton of people in the portal. Where I feel for it is, I mean, there's a lot of guys declaring for the draft leaving, going to be asked to leave just because they have their degree. There's going to be a lot of kids that don't have anywhere to land that don't have their degree, that were given bad advice. And that's what sucks, because we were talking with our buddy Robbie the other day, and it's just like, it's free agency now. Free
Yep.
agency is great. You know what happens a lot of times to guys who go in free agency? They never get signed again. They never play again. That's my fear. There's going to be kids out there in it that just are never going to find a place to play.
Yeah, that's the concern. And obviously we saw this coming. The transfer portal is free agency for good or ill, and I think it's more or less. I mean, it does give players freedom, which I'm all for. But obviously, with freedom comes risk. So you take the safety net away a little bit as well, in exchange for the fact that, hey, you can pack up and move when the mood strikes you, when you feel it is in your best interest. But again, you're doing that with much less of a safety net than you were before, because you can do that before you have your degree. You don't have to think about the decision because you don't have to sit a year, so there's not that. There's less of a impetus to kind of step out there and see what's out there. Because if something is out there that does strike your fancy, you can make the move at any time. So we'll see how this continues to shake out. But let's go ahead, and while we're talking about the portal, let's talk about some of the positions that we are targeting. And we had talked about this, I think, a couple episodes ago, where we really need to focus. We said quarterback was number one. We said probably defensive line was number two. Offensive line and wide receiver are probably 3A and 3B.
And the top notch one that we needed to get taken care of. 6 p.m. tonight, Brian. You saw it. I saw it. Hokie Nation saw it. That we can erase that now. Go ahead, mark the scribble through it. QB room is now significantly better with the commitments of Jason Brown coming from South Carolina and Grant Wells coming over from Marshall. Who do you want to talk about first, Brian? Jason or Grant?
Let's start with Jason.
All right, Jason. First of all, he's coming home. This is a Fredericksburg kid, played with Taiwan Garbett, spent some of his early years up at FCS St. Francis, where he was a starting quarterback in 2019. Threw for over 3,000 yards, 62% completion percentage, 28 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. When the 2020 season canceled, he decided to transfer over to South Carolina, where he started 4 games this year, went 2-2, including beating Auburn and Florida.
Yep.
720 yards there, 8 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. 6'3", 230-pound guy, so well-built, older guy. Do you think he is in the lead as we sit here, as they just dropped their commitments to come to Tech?
That's hard to say. I feel like, so we'll talk about Grant in a second. I feel like Jason is that guy that gives you kind of a high floor at the quarterback position. He does a lot of things pretty well. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes. He may not win you a ton of games, but he's a guy that can go out there, manage the game, make all the throws, won't hurt you. And usually you're going to go home with the W there. So that's what I like about him. Obviously being a hometown kid, wanting to play for Tech when he was in high school, finally getting, the come around here for a chance to be a Hokie. So that's big. And I'm happy to have him. I feel like already that's an upgrade to the quarterback room, even for the 2021 campaign, let alone what we thought we might be working with in 22.
Absolutely.
And then at the same time, we got Grant Wells with the commitment. And I feel like he's the higher ceiling guy. He's had a little bit more recent playing time, playing G5 opponents, playing some Power 5 opponents on that schedule. Did well. The only thing I'd like to see him clean up is the interceptions, but efficient otherwise. If he can cut his interceptions in half, then we're looking at a damn high ceiling for that quarterback, especially if we're not leaning on him too much within the running game.
Yeah.
He is more of he's not a pocket passer, but he's not a true dual threat. He's kind of, he's that pocket guy with some wiggle.
Exactly what he is. Where Jason's doesn't have quite the wiggle, but Jason's 6'3", 230. So you kind of, it's one of those things where Jason probably can take some hits, especially playing 4 games down at South Carolina, playing more. Essentially, he played better competition. He played Clemson, he played Auburn, he played Florida. He saw better competition and more athletes than Grant Wells did. But don't get me wrong, Grant Wells, he was the CUSA Freshman of the Year back in 2020. And his career numbers are really insane to only have played 2 years, over 5,600 yards, over 30 touchdowns. You said it perfectly. He does have to clean the interceptions up and the turnovers in general. He's also fumbled the ball a lot. But they both have arms, right?
Yep.
Both of their arms are better than Braxton's. Are they the athlete? No, they're not. But that's okay in what we're probably projecting what we're going to be doing on offense. The way I kind of see it right now is just because Jason Brown has played the level of competition he's going to see week in and week out here at Tech next year, I think he's in the lead. I also think he's in the lead. He has 1 year of eligibility left. 1 year. Grant Wells he just completed his third freshman year, Brian.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
It takes a lot of skill to do that.
So he has essentially 3 seasons left of eligibility after this year. And you have Taj Bullock, and I'm going to go ahead and throw Taj in there. Taj has 4 seasons left of eligibility. So from where we were looking at, oh my God, how are we going to figure this out? You've got your 1 year gap guy, and then you've got a guy who's played, solid backup, and then you've got the project. So that room went from shit to this isn't terrible, and our backup quarterback situation is 100 times better than what it was last year at this point in time.
Yeah, we actually have, regardless of who ends up winning the job, you at least have one guy behind that person that can go in a game and get you a win or two. If the starter has to miss significant time, that you won't see a significant drop off like we saw this year, where you had to pretty much improvise an offense around the limitations of your backup versus essentially playing your offense with a tweak here or there. Yeah. It's the difference between calling certain plays that that guys it's their bread and butter versus having to tailor the entire offense around what that guy does well.
Exactly.
With Connor Blumrick in the game, you had to tailor the entire offense around power quarterback runs, play action passes, things like that. There wasn't a whole lot of rhythm,
none,
in that offense with Connor at quarterback, and that's not Connor's fault. He was put in a situation where he was the best available option, which is unfortunate. But that's how things shook out between Knox's injury, between Knox leaving, between Knox's limitation, between Braxton's injury, Braxton's limitation, Braxton into the transfer portal. 2021 was as bad of a quarterback situation as we've seen probably ever, at least since the I'm trying to even think of when it was worse.
Can I tell you the only other time it was really this bad?
Brewer Motley, maybe?
I mean, Molly could play. I mean, Molly beat Purdue.
Molly can at least throw the ball. He can make all the throws.
Can I say, and this is no disrespect, but 20 years ago when Vic went down?
Yeah.
No disrespect, but we didn't have essentially a backup quarterback behind Michael Vick.
The front end was much higher.
Oh, just a little bit. But, even in the years with like Dornan and Tyrod, you felt good. Maybe Tyrod with Logan, because a couple times Logan had to come in and he made good passes. So probably 20 years ago. Yeah. It's probably the last time it was as bad as it was last year because there was no one behind the number one guy.
Yeah, I was thinking like front end quarterback that has limitations, backup quarterback that is even a drop off from that. That's why I went with the Brewer Motley thing.
Yeah, but at least you felt like they could play. So who knows, man? All right, Brian. The other position we've talked about, and we know 2 big offers, and things are very interesting. The wide receiver room. Jaden Blue got a Temple. Look up his numbers. Very good wide receiver. Has shown he can do it against P5 competition, and Antoine Wells from up at JMU Highland Springs product. Um,
Wells is getting a bunch of buzz from a
he's
lot of
getting
schools.
everywhere.
Yeah, so
Everywhere.
if we end up pulling that, that's a big pull. Um, I'm not necessarily putting it in the bank, especially since we don't have a wide receiver coach yet. But I'll say this: now that we've got quarterbacks, it's going to be a lot easier to start talking to wide receivers
It is going
because
to be a
up
lot.
until this point, it's hard to say, all right, come here. But we got Connor Blumrick throwing balls, and we got a redshirt freshman that saw a handful of series in a bowl game, and that's it. Uh,
Mhm.
Now you got two quarterbacks that have seen a good amount of time at various schools. You got something that you can sell now.
You have
Got
a
something you
selling
can
product.
sell to the wide receivers.
Well, and for guys like Wells, I think Blue might have 2 years of eligibility left. I think I have to go back and look. But a guy like Wells, it's like you're not going to be screwed next year. Look at our plan. He's a freshman. You have, if you're going to be here 3 years, you're going to have a good quarterback at all points in time. And, you have the kid from Hawaii who went in the portal, the Wyoming kid who blew up this year is in the portal. So, you know, it's now something you can sell of what you've got. Can I say something else, Brian? This dropped after you built our rundown here. We made an offer to Ryan Johnson, a DN out of Stanford,
Yep.
this afternoon. Um, and again, there's your DL, and that's pretty big. That again, we're starting to make those offers, trying to kind of see what Brent Pry wants to do. Um, Nobody's additionally left in the last few days, but we did have a confirmation, and I know this makes you feel good. Maybe not as good as Joe Rudolph, but really good. Silas Dancy says he's coming back for his super senior season.
Yep. That's big for us because that gives us three returning offensive linemen with some significant playing time
And
between him and Caden Moore and then Parker Clements.
yep,
So getting those three, that at least gives you some foundation to lean on. We're probably still going to target at least one or two offensive linemen in the portal,
true.
but we got some younger guys that are coming in. We got some guys that have been in the program for a few years that might be able to step into that role. Thinking of a Jesse Hansen. Shout out Matt Neal.
Oh, jeez. Man, I'm sorry you got drugged, dude. It was kind of funny. But yeah, but I think Silas coming back too is now you feel like Silas has played both tackle and guard.
Yep.
He's played a lot of tackle, more than a lot of people think, but he's really built to be a guard. It's one of those things where you feel like I got two or three insiders figured out. Clement probably can play. I'm gonna guess he's gonna be it right. I think we'll probably go after a left in the portal, and center's wide open, which is a little scary. I wish Johnny or Brock could come back for one more season, but that's probably not going to happen. Um, so you sit here and it's just we have three guys who all have played significant time. You have a really good offensive line coach coming in. You have guys you can sell in the portal. You have guys who are already on the roster who maybe Rudolph unlocks the potential in them. So, all in all, not in a bad spot on the offensive line. I think me and you were worried, like if Silas leaves, your best two starters are freshmen,
Yeah.
and that's scary.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be interesting to see if who they specifically target in the portal, if they target anyone, and how much progression we see and development that we see in the spring. Like if we see some jumps from guys in the spring that we weren't anticipating, I think that's a really good sign. Um, if we can find maybe two other guys, and again, you talked about Silas at guard. Silas is going to play whichever position we need him to play the most,
Mm-hmm.
whether that's left tackle or whether that's guard. Probably left guard. So he's either slide in for Lacita Smith or he's going to take over for Luke Tenuta.
Yeah.
What that looks like is the big question. Who plays center is probably a bigger question. Um, I could see us targeting a center in the portal more than I could see us targeting other positions, just because that's the most need position that we probably don't really have an established seasoned player on the roster.
It's true. It's true.
So if we end up targeting a player in the portal and we're only taking one, I'd like to see us take a center and potentially a left tackle. There's not going to be a ton of left tackles out there in the portal, but that's where I would go. But I'd go center before left tackle because I think Silas could potentially hold it down for one season.
All right, I hear that, man. I hear that. Yeah, it'll just be interesting to see where guys are transferring out of, where guys are transferring into, and again, it's development up front too, or not up front, but of development of who's there.
Yeah.
Because again, that's going to tell a lot. If you don't see us attacking the portal for offensive linemen a lot, we can then speculate. We really can speculate for the next 3.5 months. Who does Joe Rudolph like, and who's where on the spring game?
Yeah.
Who's out there on that first unit? All right.
Yeah, and the question is going to be, right now we're seeing guys that are making moves in the portal right now want to get on the spring semester with their new team. They want to get spring practice under their belt. There's going to be a bunch of guys that aren't sure where they're going, haven't got enough bites yet where they feel comfortable pulling the trigger. They're going to ride out the spring and be ready for summer.
Exactly.
Which helps them and hurts them in some ways. So it helps them because they get to process the transfer portal offers and make a better decision for themselves. It's not as rust of a situation there, but they're foregoing the chance to get that spring ball, get their position locked in heading into fall camp. They instead of having to go into fall camp where they got to earn it.
It's true, but the other piece is with spring ball, and for example, let's say we don't come out and we don't have a starting center, we don't have another starting tackle or guard. You go put your name in the portal, then look at his tape. He started for 2 seasons. He ain't All-American, but we just looked at spring and what we saw, and it wasn't great. So let's go get someone who on tape we have. So, yeah. All right, Brian, before we get into wrapping up the bowl and looking at a few other topics, we are going to take a quick pause for a message from our digital partners.
As we take a quick break, we'd like to tell you about getting your free website report from our digital partner, Grassroots Digital Marketing Studio. They'll tell you how your website ranks on Google, on-site SEO, and social media. No commitment to buy anything. You can get your free report by visiting grassrootsdigitalstudio.com/free-website-report. Now back to the episode.
All right. So the Pinstripe Bowl wrap, Brian. Let's start this. Even though we are not Yankees fans by any stretch of the imagination.
Nope.
Any stretch of the imagination. The helmets that they did were cool as hell.
Yeah, some of the coolest helmets that we've seen in terms of alternate logos and things like that. Getting the Yankee NY on there, that was pretty cool to see. Harkens back to when the Yankees came down to Blacksburg, wearing the maroon and orange. So that was really kind of big. Probably one of the better, like I said, better alternate design helmets that we've had.
Yeah.
So shout out to the folks behind that team, Clark and everybody else. So
yeah, big shout out. Whoever designed it, it looked great. I am sure if one of those ever sneaks out of buildings, that thing is going to fetch a lot of money because they said they were not going to auction them off or sell them. So that tells me that they're going to people,
Yeah.
whatever. All right. Well, let's talk about the game itself, Brian. It was an ugly game, really ugly. Hokies lose 54-10. And Brian, I want to go through our game plan and let's see how many X's we give. First of all,
Okay.
we talked about we had to field a team.
Barely. We
did.
cleared that bar barely.
Guys like Dwayne Lofton didn't play. Several other guys didn't play. And I think that was nobody. I heard nobody got sent home. But
We were thinner than we thought we were going to be, and we already knew we were going to be thin.
Yep, we had starting offensive tackles playing defensive tackle near the end of the game. And with all the opt outs we had, in the time of COVID where it was right before all the new guidelines came down, we were super thin. And, it showed in the game plan. And speaking of the game plan, one of our big game plans, Brian, was we said, hey, we need to control the clock. We got to control the clock in this game. And, we kind of did it, Brian. We outpossessed them 34-26. So
there's a reason we did that, though.
There is, but it was one of our keys, and we did it. But the reason we did it is because we could not limit big passing plays or just big plays in general the entire game on defense.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the last 2 points we talked about for our defense was bend, don't break, and limit the big passing plays. We broke a lot, and a lot of those were big passing plays deep down the field for touchdowns. And
70-plus yard runs, multiple receptions over 25 yards, multiple runs over 20 yards. Punt returns of 90-plus yards.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think what kind of me and you were talking about the bend, don't break, and limiting those big passing plays. You said straight up, Brian, like we need to run cover 3 quarters the whole game. I saw a lot of man. I saw a lot of single highs. My eye did you see that, or is it just me not knowing what I'm looking at?
There was some of that. Some of it was cover 3 that because of their alignment became de facto single high, based on the routes that were ran and the alignment of the wide receivers. Some of it was just bad technique. Some of it was just perfect play call against bad defense call or the defensive call that time. And some of it was just sloppy play. And you get that when you have guys that are playing more snaps than they're used to. But to me, the offense, I give a little bit of a mulligan. The players. The defense, I don't give them a whole lot of a pass here. I feel like there were enough guys that had played significant snaps on the defense that they should have had more life than they had. If they'd have given up 38 points, maybe 38 or less, I'd be like, all right, well, that's not a bad effort considering the thinness in losing a couple frontline players. It's the extra 2 or 3 touchdowns there that really makes the difference in what would have been a respectable outcome versus the clown show that we saw. Now, on offense, the thing that I've got a criticism for is the thing I've criticized the whole year. The play caller. The play caller. Yeah. 3, 4, 5 years. Yeah. And my big thing is that, yeah, you started Connor, but this was not a empty the clip, throw everything but the kitchen sink at Maryland. This was a
we do what we
borderline conservative, do what we do. The same offense that we saw rolled out against, Miami and UVA, we saw rolled out against Maryland, and there wasn't any significant wrinkles added in there to give any sort of new look. There wasn't as much of an emphasis on the running game, I feel, as there should have been.
Oh
in
no,
terms of getting the ball to the running backs. And I thought there was some opportunity to get the short passing game involved, which we haven't done all year, and we didn't do again.
didn't do it again. It was same old. And for a guy who potentially was coaching for his job, there were no tricks, there were no interesting. And I know people were saying, "Well, look what we've got here. What can we do?" Well, that's the thing. You look at what you've got, and if you even don't have that much, you still say, "Well, we're going to dial up some things. We're going to do some different things. We're going to take some risks
Yeah,
because you are playing for it's a bowl. You're not playing for a championship. You're just playing a football game. It's the last one of the seasons. And it's like, no, we're just going to do this. We're going to do the same old simple game plans. It's going to work. No trick plays, no, double reverse passes, anything like that. It was literally, I'm just calling these 8 plays on a play sheet, and I'm trying to get out of here as quick as I can. And,
I say he play called his way into a high school job.
ooh, ooh. There was a Jaden Pate sighting. Heck of a catch by him on the sideline.
Yeah,
Um, Malachi Thomas had, Malachi's a freshman. And I think what we saw those last few weeks was a freshman body hitting the wall like so many times. But, you know, Blumrick did the best he could. And
should have been a quicker hook to Taj, in my opinion. If you weren't gonna, if
should have
that's
been
the offense
every
you're gonna
fourth drive.
call, then you should have gotten Taj in there sooner.
Every fourth drive it should have been. Every fourth drive, he should have been out there running thing, not going in, handing the ball off, and then running off the field. He did finally come on, had a couple passes completed for
Yeah,
27 yards, ran the ball a few times. Definitely, I will say this. Looking at that, was it like the out pass he threw? It was like a 15-yarder. Am I making that up?
no,
That ball had some zip on it. And he threw it
yeah,
very nice on the back shoulder to not Connor Blumrick, Luke Bustle, the walk on.
yep,
Very nice looking passes.
yeah. And then
So
he did have the one overthrow on the little dump.
yep,
So there's things to work on. Probably working on a touch a little bit and things like that. But when he got his read, knew where he wanted, knew what he wanted to do with the football right away, and was able to
do it.
step and make the throw, it looked pretty good. There's still obviously things to polish there, but that's what spring ball's for. That's what fall camp's for. And that's what probably one more year of sitting behind somebody's for.
And
Um,
also, can I say something? Also, he's getting a much better coaching staff now
yeah.
to help
And
him
he's getting a
develop.
coaching staff that honestly, based on his frame and his tools, is more designed to take advantage of the skills that he has. I think what we're getting with Brad Glenn, and what we're getting with Tyler Bowen and what he likes to do in that system can really work to the skill set that Boyd has. He just I'm sorry, not Boyd, but Bullock.
But
Um, yeah, I mean, I think it's gonna play to his skill set a little bit more, and it won't be a one read and run go offense
no,
anymore. So
not at all. And the one thing I'll also say, Brian, I think every player we hit on had for Maryland had a good game in some way, shape, or fashion. I hate being right, but when
yeah,
you know, every week we sit here, guys, and we sort of we kind of independently look and then decide who we're going to get. Um, and I mean, we hit like obviously the quarterback lit it up. The running back had a nice day. Daryl Jones was not on our radar. Shout out to that kid from the 757 having a hell of a day against the Hokies. Um, you know, what can you say? They played great. They had a full staff. They had everyone vested. Mike Loxley is still 26 games under 500. He could win 10 games the next 4 seasons. He still wouldn't break 500. And that I don't think Mike Loxley and that staff they called a great game against a depleted team, and that's all I can say.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think that's an indication that they're taking another step. I think that's just they played a team that was already down numbers and they were down some more, and they had an interim head coach, and they were starting their essentially third string quarterback that probably should be an H back. There's a lot of things going on that are playing into that. So, Loxley, and I know Maryland social media had a lot of fun with that, but
Oh yeah, the Pry thing, they had fun with that. And
yeah,
like,
they were beating the shit out of their chest for beating a team that was down like 20
20
players and
players,
10 plus starters.
and they
Yeah.
got. And it was funny
Good
that
job. Good job, Maryland.
some of the Penn State folks were then just ripping them, especially about the Pry because it was Pry on the 70-yard touchdown, and they were like, "Yeah, we see what it is. He smacked y'all multiple years in a row, so you gonna come at it like this, all right?" And we
Yeah.
remember,
I think he didn't Stout even say something about it.
yeah, Stout said something, but just remember 2026, right? That's the year
Yep.
we're playing them. Just remember that. All right,
Mike
Brian.
Loxley will not be the head coach of Maryland by the
No,
time we play them, though.
if he is, they are, they want to be mediocre, which kind of what they are. All right, Brian, let's hit a few other topics here. The playoff games. Let's talk about the Cotton Bowl first, Bama, Cincinnati. What's your take on that? Just
I thought that Cincinnati played pretty well overall, especially on defense. Just what you saw with what Bama was able to do in both sides on the trenches is where the differentiator was.
yes, it was.
Once they got a decent lead, they were able to just grind the game out on offense, and they were able to dominate Cincinnati up front with their defensive line and their
Yeah.
front seven.
Can I ask this? And it's something our buddy Dwight Vick kept talking about. He said he loves to run those 3-man. He loved to play against 3-man fronts. Were you shocked that Fickle and that defensive staff didn't adjust? Because my thought was, could you take one of those outside linebackers in that 3-3-5 stack and almost make them like at a 9 or an 8 and shift everybody to different gaps? They never did it.
No, and I think if you still had Marcus Freeman, you would have.
Okay.
Because he was known that despite the base alignment, he would throw different fronts at you, especially if he saw problems that were going on. So I think if you still had Marcus there, you would have probably seen that adjustment. That's not I'm not trying to knock here, but I think just the feel of it and the flow of it, I would have probably gotten more guys on the line of scrimmage and taken my chances that we'd be able to get them before they got past the second level.
All right. I also think that Saban is what he is. He had a month to prepare. He saw how good those cornerbacks were. He was without Michi, his best wide receiver. He wasn't going to challenge them that much. He wasn't going to go out there and say, oh, I'm going to just sling around all day. No, we're going to run the ball. We have more Joes than they have. We're just going to grind them down.
Yep.
Now, the Orange Bowl, I mean, I hate to say this, Georgia just used the game plan they should have used Monday. They played the game plan out to show Alabama, hey, here's how we can beat you guys. Quick short passes, little running game, then taking shots over the top occasionally.
Well, what does the quick short pass do? I mean, so Michigan, if you're talking about their defense,
negates Will Anderson.
Exactly. You can't impact the quarterback if the ball's not in the quarterback's hands anymore.
Damn right. And you saw it. I mean, Hutchinson, that guy's going to be a stud NFL player. Don't get me wrong. He is. But to me, Kirby Smart, again, they had that month to prepare. He knew what he had to do. But he laid the game plan that can beat Alabama. He gave Nick Saban a week to say, oh, you're going to do this. Watch for a lot of press in that game. Watch for a lot of get your hands over here. Don't come up because he's trying to get them out here.
Yep.
Where if they ran their normal offense, they would have beat Michigan. It would not have been a blowout, but they would have beat Michigan. And I don't get that. Maybe that's one of those things where they thought, well, if they're hitting some of those trick plays and some of those end arounds, and they get to the mid-20s, we've got to score. It showed
Yeah,
pretty early they weren't going to score.
I don't think they. Yeah, I don't think they thought that Michigan. I think they thought Michigan was going to be able to score more, so they
Mm-hmm.
thought they had to match them point for point. So ultimately, because they were able to get them out of their game a little bit early, they were able to feast on them in the way that defense likes to.
Yes,
So once they got the lead, it really played into that defense's strengths, which is the
exactly.
opposite of what happened in the Bama
SEC.
Georgia game in the
Yep,
SEC championship. So
100%.
um, yeah, I think that's the big thing, and Georgia's going to need to do that again. They're going to need to, in my opinion, if they're going to win that game, they need a lead late second quarter, something to keep that game slowed down. Get Bama a little bit out of their game plan because Bama, I think again is gonna want to run the football.
They're going to
To
run the football, but they're going to throw it like they did in that first game. What Bama did is Bama's got the blueprint. The question is, can Kirby adjust enough to take away that without exposing other parts of his game, which
yeah,
Saban's a chess master. Because if he see, I think Kirby's going to do this. He's going to have the game plan already laid out of what him and Bob are going to do. All right, can we just say this, Brian? What we're talking about now is why 12 is a better format. We're talking
yep,
about we have so much time to prepare, so much time to get ready. Saban and Kirby Smart both have thousands of analysts. They really don't have thousands, but they have a lot of staff. Where if you go when it goes to 12, and I truly believe it's going to go to 12 before 2025, you're not going to have that time anymore because on the 12 model, you're going to have probably 2 weeks, right?
2 weeks is going to be the longest span you have. 2 full weeks.
2 full weeks. And in that case, I know somebody says, well, that's a lot of time to break things down. It's a lot of time to break the things down, but what it's not a lot of time to do is to implement the game plan, right?
Yep.
Usually, my
You can't do a week of breakdown, a week of installation, and then 2 weeks of practice.
yeah, and that's why I still think going to the 12 model, which we're going to get probably sometime into the spring when we have one of these weeks. Brian, what were you doing the day I sent you like 19 texts like this long each? Your phone
I'm
died or
trying to.
something? I'm trying to
What's
remember
that?
because you come back to me and you're like, "Hey, dude, everything okay?" Like, "Oh, sorry," because you're like, "I'm doing something." I'm like, "Oh shit, sorry, Brian."
Yeah, I forget what I was doing.
He was doing something, and I sent him a ton of texts about the way 12 has to break down, and we'll do that later. But that whole having not having as much time is where it's going to give the lesser teams an advantage because when you give Nick Saban or Kirby Smart all that time to break it down, implement it, run practices implementing it,
Yep.
that's why they win. That's why they're so damn good. Um, let's hit this other hot topic, Brian, because it was so hot over the past real 10 days. The bowl opt outs. What's your feel on this as a guy who played?
Oh man, I've said a lot about this on Twitter, off Twitter, around Twitter. So anybody that's seen what I've said probably either already knows what I'm going to say and hates it or loves it. But to me, I think the problem that we have is that we wrap the bowls in with the current playoff format and then say these bowls that used to matter no longer matter. Okay, yeah, because you've wrapped them into the same package that you have with this college football playoff, but obviously the playoff games matter more. They mean more. And when you had a scenario before with the BCS, you had two teams more or less that were playing for it all, but New Year's Six still mattered to a degree. It matters less now with the current format, in my opinion. if you're not in those college football playoff games, the New Year's Six game mattered less in terms of prestige, in terms of players wanting to go there, and the opt outs are the opt outs. I support the opt outs. I'm not anti opt out. I personally wouldn't be a person opting out of these games. That's because I'm an experienced guy. If I've got a chance to experience something, I'm going to take advantage of that. I didn't get seriously injured enough in my career where I would have been had that in the back of my mind. I had one serious injury and a couple injuries that kept me out a game or two. I was never injured to the point where I was missing, 10 plus games or anything like that. I had lingering injuries that cost me things and probably limited my overall ability, but I never had anything catastrophic that kept me from playing games, except for one injury that I
The
talked
ankle,
about there.
your
Yeah,
ankle, the
yeah.
ankle, and that was near the end of
That was halfway through
yeah,
the next to last game of the season, my
yeah,
senior year.
sir.
So
It was the end of the season.
yeah, so I missed a game and a half for that. I missed an entire off season recovering. So really, when I rolled into my freshman year at Hampton Sydney, I was pretty much not in the
Yeah,
shape I'd like to be.
well, 'cause
Um,
you were in a boot forever.
yeah, so
It seemed
but
like,
that's neither here nor there. But
yeah,
when it comes to bowls, that's something. Just the experience of it would be a big deal for me. But if my bank is dependent on that and my family is dependent on me doing something, and even guys that are kind of that fringe draft player that are opting out, hoping to just make a camp
yeah,
as an undrafted free agent. I mean, you're not going to do that if you get injured. And I know we can talk about um, one catastrophic injury in the bowls being a big deal.
Jalen
Don't need to
Smith.
mention it. Yeah. So
Yeah, with McGahee. Oh, that was a
yeah,
national championship game.
yeah.
2012.
So I mean, there's always the chance of that happening. But and I get that people say, well, if that's going to happen, I want to be playing for something. Um, Again, this is why I go towards the 12 team playoff, because you can get more of those formatted games in there,
They mean
and
something. They
yeah,
mean
they mean
something.
something. More games mean something that's going to limit the opt outs. So that'll help your school's roster, your school's ability to be competitive in those games. And again, I'm not for getting rid of the bowl format altogether,
Mm-mm.
but I think we need to stop kidding ourselves that bowl games matter if you want to attend them. I don't think they matter outside of that. I don't
No,
think you necessarily owe your team a exhibition game if you have bigger things in mind for your future.
exactly. That's my feel on it. Like, you can sit here and you can say, um, well, I would play. I would play. If you knew you were guaranteed a 8-figure paycheck, you would not think. You say you wouldn't think twice. Bullshit. If you're
Yep.
guaranteed an 8-figure paycheck, well, if I get injured, I'm gonna still get drafted. What you just said, an 8-figure paycheck or get into a camp. It makes sense. Now, what could be done to entice these kids? We have name, image, and likeness now. If you're one of those bowl games and you really want one of those kids to play, shell out some money for them.
Yep.
You can do it. You can make them they can be in a commercial for your company. Here's $1 million. Come play for us. Then you'd have the kids thinking about things. And to your point too, I think the way the New Year's Six is going to go and the way it's kind of shaping is those bowls are going to be involved before New Year's Day. They just are.
Yep.
They are. And then those bowls will matter. And in that regards, if they're being played earlier, the other bowls are going to start getting more primetime spots. More prestige. So you still have a chance to go out there and play. Any kid that opts out, I'm not upset. you know what? Have somebody on the team that teaches these kids how to understand to get those insurance policies.
Yeah.
Like, we want you to play. The cat is in the room with you, by the way. It just jumped on the table.
Ah. Oh shit.
I saw it too. I'm like, what the hell?
What's up, Luna? How's it going?
But have someone to educate. Like, I really don't want to play in this. I want to play in this game, but I don't want anything to happen. I'm going to get drafted in the first round. All right, cool. Bring this guy in. Hey, you can look at taking an insurance policy, and if something catastrophic happens to you, you have a policy that covers you up to whatever. I think the Jadeveon Clowney was like $5 million,
Yep.
which life changing money. He's clearly made a lot more. So it is what it is.
Well, it's life changing money, even if that's your ceiling.
Yeah,
Um, it's absolutely if you don't have to use it, then that's all the better, especially if you're a high caliber player, because you're probably making that. First round picks are making that in their first year in the league, more or less, between incentives and rookie deals.
exactly. All right, Brian. Let's touch on one other thing real quick. The passing of John Madden. Um, for kids like us, I think our generation is Madden encompasses everything
Yeah.
because, and this is why I'll say this: we didn't see him coach, but we knew he was a coach, and we knew he was a really good coach. Then he became the voice of the NFL for us.
Yeah.
And then when we were, you know, late elementary school, early middle school, Madden comes out. And, you know, it was everything. He was all
It
parts of our life.
it literally changed the game of football,
It did.
in terms of how we think about it. Everything that we do with fantasy football now is in a lot of ways tied to Madden and some of the redraft formats that they had in some of the
Yeah.
Madden dynasties and things
Yeah.
like that. So I mean,
Can
a lot of these things are tied into that.
I ask you a
I
question?
Yeah,
What's the first one you remember? What's the first one in your head when you think Madden? What was the first one you remember playing?
the first one I played a lot was '94.
I played 95 a lot. I think that's year I also got my Sega too.
Yeah,
So it made sense. But what's your favorite?
favorite. Oh man, that's tougher. Probably I can't remember the year, but it was the second one that was on the PS2. Because the first one there was still a lot of bugs with the because it was the one with the first
Five?
true.
Was
I
that
think it was no, hang on,
oh
efforting.
three?
Let's see. I think it was.
Either oh three or oh four.
I think it was '03.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, actually 2002.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Yes, that makes sense.
01 was the first one that was on PS2.
Senior year in high school, then, right?
Yeah, so that's the one I'll go with. I mean, there's been others that had more features and better features, but I feel like that was the first one that kind of made it more of a true football simulation versus
Yeah.
some of the less graphically capable games in the Sega generation and PS1
Absolutely.
generation.
And the PS1 generation. I'm oh 06. I'm oh 06. Yes, I don't use the vision thing. I always took off the vision thing. But every other thing, it felt like you were truly running the franchise. The draft and stuff had been there. The practices had been there. But when you could do the practices midweek with plays,
Yeah,
and like if you ran those plays enough, it would like make you better during the game. That was always mine. But the guy himself was an incredible football coach. And again, that's why I said our generation, when we were 10 or 12, you start hearing John Madden, the 1970s weren't that far off. It was like that was only 20 years ago. You start reading, holy God, he won 100 games. He won a Super Bowl. He coached all these, Hall of Fame players. And
What
and
he's still the king of win percentage, right?
he won 75% of his games. I mean, and I don't think that'll ever be touched because of going to more games. But then watching him, as a Niners fan in the 90s, he called so many of our big games.
Yeah.
And I mean, you got to get him later with Peyton, but you knew, especially in the mid 90s, if it was him and Summerall calling your game, you were the game of the week.
It was a big ass game.
It was a big game. Um, and I always like what somebody said, because some people said he was bombastic and over the top and he was silly with the drawings. He brought football to where someone like myself who didn't play understand it.
He
And
was able to easily break down the nuts and bolts and then give it to you. Like he essentially, so he took the ingredients and then he gave you a dish.
yep.
Like I can take the ingredients and see the dish, but you might not see the dish looking at those ingredients. But once he breaks it down into the meal and gives it to you on a plate,
Yep.
you can digest it. So he did that so well, and I think just an infectious personality. You can call it bombastic if you want to.
Infectious is a better word. Much
Yeah,
just you just felt like you felt like if you sat and talked to him, like he would explain it to you. And I don't know if you heard this story. Did you know he used to teach a like an entry level class, like an entry to football? Like I think
I
he
did.
taught it at Cal. Yeah, he taught it at Cal, and someone said that's why he became so good at being able to what you just said, convey it to just anybody. Because in that class, he'd be getting into the nuts and the bolts and getting hard, and he would see deer. They were like he would see the deer in the headlight looks, and he'd pull it back.
Yep.
So essentially, every year he had someone to go to, but it's an icon lost. It was literally days after the All Madden documentary, which I have not watched, but I heard is pretty cool.
I did.
But,
I watched it on the day it came
Christmas Day?
out. Yeah,
Yeah, Christmas Day. Nice.
I was sitting there with my father-in-law.
Very
We,
nice.
yeah, in the living room watching that, kind of just wrapping up a nice Christmas day. Um, and I mean, I know when they were talking about the making of it, that his family told him just the sections that he was interviewed. It was just going to kind of be a little small thing, and then obviously they brought in these all time guys and guys that he spent a bunch of time with, and folks that he was on the road with his crew. And it turned into the documentary that it was. And I think that him living to see that, I think, was really
Great.
really big for him. So
It was. It was really great. So rest in peace, John Madden. Now, Brian, let's go look at the bowl pick'ems. Um, I'm still trying to figure this out. We ended with the same number of total wins predicted. You have more losses. I still don't figure that out. That's the whole all of Saturday pick'ems. Brian wins bowl pick'ems though. I take on the regular season. Brian takes on the bowl season. If you would have went with Brian 21-14, you would have made some people some money. I ended up 17-18. I still don't know how the way I started, winning one game out of the first 8. But real good bowl season. A lot of really fun games, especially the games don't matter. But New Year's Day, those 3 games on New Year's Day, man, the Fiesta, the Outback, and the Citrus were probably 3 of the best games of the year.
yeah, absolutely.
And then the Rose, just unbelievable. I mean, you know, it's why you need talented guys. Scheme's great, and Utah played their nuts off that game, but you saw that talent in the end. With especially Jackson Smith, Najaba. Holy shit!
Yep.
I mean, that kid went. 300 plus yards, lit it up, made a name for himself. Definitely a first round talent, probably coming out next year. So, great bowl season. And there's one more, Brian, just a few
We got
days from now.
we got one more, man.
The national championship game, and we'll do our picks on it. I will watch it. That's just the love. I know some people were saying not going to watch. It's just an SEC thing. Bama, Georgia, in Indy. Georgia, the favorite, laying 3 points. Brian, what do you say on this one?
I'm taking Georgia. I think the
Money
the
line and spread?
money line and spread.
Okay.
I
All
think
right.
it's a tight one. That's like a 4 point win for Georgia. Late touchdown, retake the lead,
Okay.
and Bama can't get it down the field in enough time. So
Got
I'm
it.
gonna go Georgia. I think them seeing what Bama did in the SEC championship game is the difference. I think this is kind of an inverse of the previous SEC national championship, where a matchup was played earlier, and the victories were swapped. I think this is another situation where the victories are going to be swapped. So I think that Georgia takes it here.
All right. I'm not going to bet against Saban. I don't know if they'll win, but I'll take Bama in the points. Um,
It, my thought is Smart has to eventually get a win here.
yeah, eventually, right? But I just, again, if Georgia had won, I think if Georgia had won the Michigan game closer and not shown a lot of cards, I think I might be leaning Georgia. But that worries me. You can't show that much to Nick Saban unless you've got something really schemed up deep. Todd Monken for Saban and that offense, because they've shown they can crack the armor of what seemed to be an impenetrable defense already. So I just want a good game.
Yeah,
And last year we got a crummy game. The year before that we got a crummy game. The year before that we got a crummy game. We haven't had a good national championship game in almost 4 years.
yeah.
So I just want a good, competitive, fun game to watch. I mentioned it earlier, Brian. Both of our pro teams, win, you're in, right?
Yep.
I win. Y'all are definitely in. We win, we're in.
If we lose, we'll need some help. If we win, we're in regardless.
Yeah.
We could have closed it out last week, but we played down to a lesser competition like we've done, and we lost another, 1-score game.
Yeah. Well, we beat up the Texans with the rookie quarterback, and now the discussion is: do you start the rookie against the Rams, or do we start Jimmy against the Rams? I don't know. Don't care. If the Saints beat or lose to Atlanta, we're in regardless. And I'm trying to look up when that game is. Hold on a second. Efforting here. Efforting.
Yeah, all we have to do is beat the Jags, who don't have a head coach and have
Y'all haven't won
played.
there. Y'all haven't won there in 7 years. Y'all got to get a monkey off y'all's back.
Eh,
7 years, Brian. Let's see.
which is
Well,
wild to me because we never lost there for so long.
forever. Yeah, the Saints game is of course going to take place the same time as our game at 4:25. So you know,
You
I
got to
really
play
don't
your
care.
nuts off regardless.
We got to play. I mean, this is why they've set this up like this. And the funny part is, you heard what could happen, right?
What's that?
If y'all lose, or if y'all lose the Chargers, or if y'all win, the Chargers and Raiders should play to a tie or something funky like that.
I'm not sure.
Where if you hold on, let me pull up the standings here. It was like if y'all lose the rate, y'all would be 9-8. If
Oh yeah, they should play to a tie, so they have one less loss.
they're 9-7-1, which percentages take them above y'all,
Yep.
which would be crappy. But then the Steelers could make it in too doing that, so it's kind of funny. But it is what it is.
Let's just win, so we don't have to worry about any of these scenarios.
That's all I want. I just want to see my team play in January in relevant football. So, is what it is. Brian, has anything broke in the last hour and a half since we jumped on here?
Nothing fun, man. I think we're good.
All right. Well, that will wrap up this episode of the Boundary Corner podcast. I am Curtis Wilson.
I'm Brian Siegler.
Excuse me. Visit our website at boundarycornerbt.com to listen to all of our episodes. While you're there, don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Subscribe to our YouTube account or your favorite podcast source, Spotify, Amazon, Apple Podcast. Our buddy Jason Long plays us in, plays him out. Check him on Apple Podcast and Apple and Spotify Music. We thank you for listening. And as always, let's go.
Hokies.